Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Benicia Unified Governing Board meeting. This is a special board meeting for July 23rd, 2020. I'd like to start off with letting everybody know there is nothing to report on any closed session items. And at this time, I'm going to ask everybody to please stand and join me in the pledge. I just went out of order. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody at this time that this meeting is being recorded for live streaming and will be archived on the district YouTube channel. In compliance with Executive Order number N29-20 and N-3520 issued by Governor Newsom on March 12th and 21st, 2020 respectively, this meeting is live streamed and recorded. I'm now going to call for an approval of the agenda. Do I have an approval of the agenda, please?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. With that said, I'm going to move into reports. Superintendent Young, do you have a report for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in with everybody and say hello to everybody who's on the screen and any of our parents and community members who are able to tune in this evening. We've got a full agenda for you for a number of items that are of particular interest. Certainly the opening of school. We have a special ed. We have a budget update, and then we have a presentation on the child care program that we were able to offer during the summer. So these are all important items to us, and we're excited to hear about them. I just wanted to put it out there, a thank you to the team, everybody that's working so hard to put all of this together, to have a program in place to serve all of our deserving kids and families. I just want our community to know that the team is enthusiastically and tirelessly working on it and really focused on doing the best we can for everybody. And I want to acknowledge our parent community for being flexible. We know that there's lots of challenges on everybody's end with work situations and home situations. So I think we can come together as a community. I've learned in 5 years as your superintendent that there's lots of very special elements in this town that gives us an opportunity to come together, to work together on behalf of our kids. We've done it before, and we will do it again, and we'll continue to get better. But again, I just appreciate everybody's flexibility and understanding as everybody's doing their best, and in a very uncertain time. It really is. I mean, it seems things change rapidly, including our decision last week, which we did, just a little bit before the governor made his decision, that the most prudent course of action for us as a school district would be to start the school year virtually. And then the governor, clarified that in his very specific criteria that if a county is on a watch list, that you have to be off of it for 14 days before you can close. So there it is. I mean, before you can open. I apologize for that.
Right.
So we're ready for tonight. We've got a full agenda for you. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and on we go.
All right, thank you. Do I have any board reports? Okay, actually just recently, Dr. Hoagland and myself sat in on a CAP meeting. This is an opportunity for Valero to talk about their role in the community and their safety plan and their progress reports. I actually did get zoomed off the meeting the last 10 minutes, so I missed the sharing opportunity to share with them some of the things that were going on in our district and the work that was going on with our staff behind the scenes this summer, since lots of you were meeting with teachers and administrators to work. So
I was happy to fill them in on your behalf.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I'm going to bet Dr. Hoagland filled us in though. So thank you very much. Anybody else have a comment for, okay. And I think just to let my colleagues know, I know that we were supposed to be on a Zoom meeting with Assemblyman Grayson. That meeting got canceled because it actually ended up, I had actually emailed him because it was the same time as the governor, and they did cancel the meeting. And I just see a little bit ago, I'm getting it across the screen that they're looking to reschedule. So as soon as that happens, I will fill everybody in and let you know. So with that said, we're going to move on to public comments from the public. Just a reminder, members of the public may submit comments on items on the agenda or any item within the jurisdiction of the school district in the following manner for meetings during the shelter-in-place executive order. They need to complete the form, the Google form that's on the link that is provided. It was open from the public from 6 to 7 o'clock this evening. I have some comments that I will read, and Trustee Zeta is going to help me along. So Mrs. Zeta, would you start, please?
Hello. Okay, the first comment I have is regarding the school reopening, and it's from Kristen Agostini. And it says, will the schools consider checking out needed workbooks to families, such as math, handwriting, and words, their way, at the beginning of the school year to use at home with distance learning or the virtual academy? This would be helpful if everything wasn't all computerized and not everything has to be printed. The workbooks were sent home last year in March. Kids would find them useful and could do some work more independently. Just an idea. And additionally, it says, I'm confused with your school phased reopening plan. I'm confused because phase 3 states full-sized classes, full school day. Is this supposed to correlate with the county and state phases? If it does, it doesn't make sense. Phase 3 should be 50% hybrid, and phase 2, 25%. Phase 4 should be a full school day, and phase 5, end of stay at home order, should be back to regular. Your plan doesn't match up with the Fairfield's plan. As a parent, it would be a hard no if you reached a full school day, full class size too soon, which is phase 3. Especially if in a higher risk household. My other concern is the communal school supplies many teachers of younger ages insist on. Will parents be given the option to send their own supplies, sanitize at home regularly? Just thinking of higher risk households again. My own child will have to use her own supplies like pencils, erasers, crayons, scissors, and etc. Also, will the desks and seats be placed apart exactly 6 or more feet with a measuring tape? And that's the end of her comment. Thank you, Ms. Agostini.
All right, I have comment number 2, and again, this is going to be opening.
Diane, you're muted.
I'm sorry, thank you.
No worries.
All right, this is on reopening, and it's from Diane Bromley. I ask the district to please consider an elementary school schedule that is similar to the AM/PM hybrid schedule, as the sample schedule is extremely difficult for any working parent in the home or outside of the home to manage their availability for their jobs and to support distance learning. Please consider a college-like model with a lecture, larger Zoom, plus a lab, smaller group Zoom, and give us the ability to have elementary schedules consolidated in either an AM or PM session. Thank you, Mrs. Bromley. Okay, Mrs. Zeta.
Thank you. This says, I wish to speak on item 11.2 and 11.4, which is special ed and reopening. It's from Patricia, oh goodness, Nidiolkova. I apologize if I said that incorrectly. And her comment is, I would like to bring to the board's attention that the SCIL special day class does not have an academic curriculum for 4th and 5th grade. My son is one of 4 SCIL students entering 4th grade. They are the oldest in this K through 5 class, and the program has grown up with them, bringing in new younger kids each year. It has been an excellent placement for my son using the STAR curriculum. However, this curriculum only covers K through 3rd grade. I've raised the issue with Julie Corona and Leslie Beatson. Julie Corona responded that they purchased the LINKS, L-I-N-K-S curriculum. However, this curriculum focuses on daily routines and only covers very rudimentary functional academics. I'm further concerned by the slide in her deck tonight that lumps the SCIL class in with the other special day classes that serve the intellectually disabled, saying that they will all focus on daily living skills and only functional academics. The SCIL class serves students with autism. They have sensory regulation issues, social and communication delays and behaviors, but they are very bright and learn quickly if taught in motivating ways that they can access. This requires an appropriate academic curriculum. Julie Corona further responded that the SCIL curriculum would consist of various online programs. These programs are not a core academic curriculum, but rather curriculum supports for distance learning, as Leslie Beatson properly labels them in her slide presentation. Unfortunately, curriculum supports don't make sense if there's no core academic curriculum to support. It will simply lead to more gaps in their knowledge if a comprehensive, systematic approach isn't taken. Furthermore, access to various online programs was purchased for all of special ed. However, there is a vast diversity of learners under that umbrella. I tried out a free trial of one of the listed programs and found it completely inappropriate for my son and provided detailed feedback as to why. Another program specifically mentioned for the SCIL class works on improving reading by focusing on phonics, which is already a strength for my son rather than a deficit. Julie Corona acknowledged that these programs are not appropriate for all students, but did not give any information on a curriculum plan that would be appropriate for the SCIL fourth graders. I also requested Leslie Beatson's input as a curriculum expert, but her response was so general that all my questions and concerns still remain, so I'm bringing it up here. Every student is entitled to an appropriate education under IDEA. The SCIL fourth graders have different placement than other special ed students, since they do not, since they do have some unique educational needs. An academic curriculum appropriate for their needs is required for them to have an appropriate education. I like both Julie Corona and Leslie Beatson to respond to this issue tonight and in more detail in the coming days. I also ask for the board's support in providing an appropriate academic curriculum for the SCIL class. Thank you very much, Patricia Nidialkova. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next comment is from Laura Cohn. The first one that she has submitted is equity and access. And she is asking, how will the district be addressing the issues surrounding equity to ensure that all students will have access to learning devices, a personal Chromebook, for example, and access to the internet for virtual learning in the fall? Her second comment also has to do with the reopening. How will the district be addressing equity surrounding, this is a repeat conversation. It's the same one. She's just labeled it two different ways, but basically she's interested in comments. Mrs. Cohn, thank you for your comment. Mrs. Ada?
Okay, this one is regarding special education, and it's from Kelly Chow. And she states, in Ms. Corona's presentation slide entitled Decisions Guided by Data, Summary of Data. The data for state SBAC is unclear. Is this a district percentage? Does it make more sense to evaluate per school site to see what programs were or were not working at each location? Is the 2018 data, left slide is showing increase in met and exceeded level. I'm echoing here. Diane, are you muted?
No, I'm
Okay, that's better. Whew. Okay, is the 2018 data left slide showing increased met and exceeded level a typo because it is 2019? Where did this number come from since most students were not tested due to the shutdown? How do you connect the dots to show that there is a correlation between what occurred between 2018 and 2019 when students were not in school almost half of 2019? What programs are you pinpointing to specifically that you think brought about this change? And then she goes on, in the slide entitled Closer Look at Specialized Academic Instruction Services within the special education offering for Gen Ed with a push and support, how will these services be provided this year? Last year, I was on my own chunking my students' work and accommodating him with alternate work that I made up myself because no other choice was provided. Also, we only received half of our speech support halfway into homeschool. I am not a resource teacher, and no pre-planning with regard to accommodations was made to help my child. How will my child's IEP be implemented so that I receive full services as I am entitled? Thank you very much, Mrs. Chow.
okay. The next comment is from Ms. Wilson, and it's regarding the reopening. She says, I would like to thank the board for deciding that our school would start at 100% virtual learning and making the safety of our children, teachers, and staff the top priority. I write tonight to voice the expectation that the district will make sure that every BUSD student has a functioning computer or laptop and access to stable internet connection. Our Robert Semple PTG sent a letter at the end of June asking Dr. Young about what structures, groups, or committees the district has in place regarding the important issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We stated that we were eager to hear the plan about how our district will begin taking actionable steps towards meaningful change and that we looked forward to collaborating with you on this journey. Clearly, we understand that much of your attention has been focused on reopening school. But we believe equity is also a vital issue, and it directly relates to the opening plans and that all of our students need equitable access to virtual learning. We hope that the reopening plans include details for how devices and assistants with internet access will be made available to all of our students and family before school begins on August 17th. One device per child, not per family, is key. In the discussions with friends and members of our PTG, this is a huge concern for our family. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mrs. Wilson.
Okay, and my final comment here is regarding section 11.4, and it's from Krista Heredia, and she states, I would like to know what the district is doing to address the equity issue of ensuring that all students have a device and internet access in order to be successful at the distance learning model of the upcoming school year. One device per student, not per household. Thank you very much, Ms. Heredia.
Okay, just a reminder to everyone, we allow our speakers to speak. Obviously, we are speaking for them, so we may not be actually honoring the 3-minute per presentation speaker, but want to remind everybody that by law, no action may be taken on any of the items raised during the public comment periods, and matters may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda. With that said, we're ready to go to item 10, which is our consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be approved by the board in one motion. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items to be pulled and discussed. Are there any items that we need to pull or discuss? Okay, with that said, I'm going to call for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This is a roll call. We have a resolution on there. Oops, sorry. I apologize. It's a roll call vote. So, Mrs. Martinez, please. Yes.
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 Okay, we'll go on to number 11, which is our discussion items. And the first one is going to be regarding our childcare and preschool summer updates.
Thank you, President Ferrucci. I just would like to welcome Ms. June Regis this evening to give us an update on the program that you ran during the summer, serving the needs of our students in the summer daycare program. And she's got some interesting and exciting news, I believe, to share with all of us this evening. So welcome, Ms. Regis.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Superintendent Dr. Young, the board, and all members of Cabinet for inviting me here this evening actually, to just tell you about what we've done so far in our opening this summer. I gave you a presentation, I guess, about a month ago on us starting, and we are almost done with our summer. So in these pictures in the front, you'll see my coordinator, Erica, dressed in PPE, and myself and some of our staff at Joe Henderson also dressed in our face shields and our aprons and gloves, because they are the welcoming committee each morning for parents. So we reopened our summer programs. Our programs were held at elementary schools. We were held at Robert Semple and at Joe Henderson. The reason why, because we wanted to meet the needs of the community with small groups, and we wanted to follow all the guidance from licensing and the California Department of Education and Public Health. So we were in the beginning trained by Terry Dean on COVID health and safety practices, how we should take the temperature of students every day, the form to be filled out by the families, what was social responsibility that we had to teach all our students.
Ms. Regis, just a real quick point, just for everybody. I don't think I see it there, but Miss Terry Dean is our district nurse.
Yes. And Terry has all been a great ally to CDU. She is on speed dial for any questions that we may have coming up. We were all, my staff and myself were also trained by Mr. Alfredo Romero, who is the director of maintenance. And there's a picture of Alfredo and John bringing in all our PPE that we received from the district and from the community. We have frequent classroom cleanings of all materials and furniture, and our parents, family, and community members are not allowed to come on campus. So everybody is met at the gate, and not only the students are allowed to be on campus. So these are some pictures of our preschool rooms. Our students were taught to practice social responsibility, teaching them to keep their mask on, because at the time when we started summer, the rules were that everybody over 2 years old would wear a mask. And I'm so happy to say that our preschoolers wear their masks from the time they come in to the time they leave. The only time they take their masks off is if they're eating or having a large motor exercise where it's not necessary to wear your mask outside. So our teachers were genius, where they used tape to separate students' desks, and so they can do that 6 feet apart. So if you look at the classrooms, you will see where our classrooms have been changed. We are saying less is more now. And we show our students, this is the little areas that you can be, and your friends, you can talk to them, but they'll have to stay into that other little tape square. We clean, and disinfect. If you see the fourth picture, you'll see all those bins. Those bins belong to each individual student. We individualize all their materials, their crayons, their pencils, their Play-Dohs. We did that for our preschoolers, and we also did it for our school-age students. And things that could not be individualized were disinfected after every use. This is our school-age program, both at Semple and at Henderson. Again, we practiced social distancing. Our students could not go off to field trips. So if you see, we did a lot of virtual field trips with different zoos and different museums. So that's a picture of them doing a virtual exercise with a museum. They also were outside building. Here's a camping thing that they built. They were able to bring their bikes every day and ride using social distancing. So they're having fun, but they're practicing again social responsibility, wearing their masks and staying as much as possible away from each other. Our check-in process, when we first started, we had a sign-in, sign-out sheets. Our financial system, Kirakabi, came up with a contactless kiosk. So there you see a picture of a dad checking in his child using a QR code. And these QR codes every 15 minutes are changed, so their system could not be hacked. It's been going really well, and I think families appreciate that. They're still filling out the daily questionnaire. Every family, every staff member must have their temperature checked at the intake and fill out that health questionnaire. You'll also see in the first picture a mat with a sanitizing kit. Each child and staff member steps into that mat. It's filled with sanitizing liquid. Then they step onto that other black rug and they walk into the classrooms in order to keep the classrooms clean. Our lunches were given to us free of charge by food services as part of their summer program. I want to thank the director, Tanya, for having or giving this to all our families. So whether you're subsidized or you were paying full cost, you got a free breakfast and a free lunch. So there's a picture of one of Tanya's staff members delivering the lunch. And there's a picture of one of my teachers doing a midday temperature check on our students. So I asked our teachers for some feedback, what they think worked and things that we can change. So the things that worked for the teachers were that the parents continually told them that they appreciated that we were open and we were taking all the necessary precautions for health and safety. The staff appreciated the smallest class sizes because that helped to be able to do the physical distancing, that we were able to use the multi-purpose rooms, and that allowed for greater physical distancing and to do some physical activities without kids being on top of one another. They appreciate the contactless sign-in because it reduced potential risk for staff and for families. And they really appreciated the custodial staff at Henderson and Semple for being so supportive and always cleaning and seeing making sure our needs were met. Things that they thought that we can improve on. Parents thought that the daily health forms were very time consuming. Those forms, we are pleased to say, are going to be part of our contactless check-in. So parents will just read the forms every day and say no or yes on the kiosk when they do the QR code. We are working on a better system for parents to pick up their children in the afternoon, especially when they're outside and parents cannot access our campus. They also wanted to point out that they think the preschoolers need more large motor play using the climb instructors. And at this time, all our climb instructors are off limits. Groupings are a challenge, as many kids would like to be in another group where their peers are, but because of the county health, we have to keep our groupings the same. So that's about where we are. We are having fun while doing our responsible thing.
So June, how many children can your program accommodate?
Based on the numbers we had pulled before summer camp, we can actually at East Site accommodate about 120 students using distancing. When we were thinking of the 50-50 AM-PM model, now that schools are going back, are going to be all virtual, there's even more room on campus that, if needed, our programs could help.
Wow, awesome.
And then I have a question, June. In terms of the cleaning in between and that type of thing, how time consuming was that? Did you find?
It is. And that was something that teachers had to learn in the first few weeks. It was a struggle. I think now they're getting better at it, because you have to be looking out and cleaning. So that takes up part of what you do. But like everything else, we are learning to work with it. Like wearing a mask. It's not an easy thing to wear a mask for your full shift. But we are learning. So asking kids to wear it.
And then I had another question too, like for the kids with when they checked in, because the parents had to stop at the door. The parents weren't able to go all the way in. How did the kids adjust to that?
Mm-hmm.
Some kids, we were surprised. It went pretty well. We had a lot of staff. We front loaded it with staff members to give kids hugs to help them, do that detachment. We talked about that a lot, and we did. Families in the beginning, they spent 3-4 months at home. So it was harder for some moms to run away and not hang around. And some moms, stood there a little bit and chatted and talked to them and say, well, I'll see you at 4 o'clock or I'll see you at 5 o'clock, and kind of ease it. But our staff were there in the first few weeks, front loading in case we had any issues with that we would be there to pacify and to help students through that transition.
So what I also liked in your pictures, it was showing your staff was using shields, the face shields. And I forget where we were just listening to that, but they were recommending that the teachers use shields so the kids could see the teacher's facial expressions. So I'm glad to see that you also played with that as well in your group. And I am assuming it was also better for the children.
It was better for the children, and we talked about that. One of our teachers, when we first talking about reopening, she thought about it and said, if I'm going to have, and she's not a year-round employee, but she said, if I'm going to have new preschoolers coming back, wearing a mask is going to be difficult because kids learn from your facial and physical cues. And so the idea of face shields came about, and that's what we decided to invest in.
June, I know this is the question on people's mind. Did you
Yes.
have any problems with illness?
No, we haven't. Praise God. We haven't
Yay.
had anybody test positive for anything like that. Everything that we thought might have been got squashed. So, you know, that has been our blessing and a saving grace. So we haven't had to, you know, think about that at all. And going forward, that's what I wish for our program, you know, because that the system is very fragile, and to have that on top of it could be, you know, very difficult.
You said that
Ooh.
the staff members were hugging the kids when they're coming in to help them feel better about
Mhm.
being separated. Is that a wise idea to hug,
Well,
considering where we're at?
all the staff members that do intake wear gloves and
Okay.
wear aprons along with their face shields. And so we thought in preschool and childcare, it's one of those things that we have to have empathy beyond, you know, what will happen normally in K-12, especially the preschoolers. So it's kind of hard, like when a child runs up or a child falls down and you kind of give them a 6 feet distance, like, you know, because
Yeah.
empathy. So we know that, we understand that. So our teachers, they have, you know, our blessing to wear gloves so they can do that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Just a quick point for me. I mean, one of the things we thought about as we went through this is an opportunity for, you know, us as a school district to learn, you know, what this could look like on that small level.
Mhm.
That at some point, when as a county, if we get off that watch list for 14 days and we're able to go back into a hybrid model, that we have an example of what this could look like with the, you know, the social distancing and the protective wear and all of that. So we've been looking at it through that lens as well. So I think we've got some good things that we continue to learn. So thank you, Ms. Regis. We appreciate your work and your staff and your commitment around this. Appreciate it a great deal.
I absolutely want to second that. And I know we've had Mrs. Regis has been willing to be our action research to see how, in fact, we can reach out and support and reach and touch more children as we unfold and go through this crazy event. So I thank you for doing that. It looks like it was actually lots of fun, and the kids seem to be responding well. So thank you. And I see hand claps going up on the screen. So I'm thinking everybody agrees. They're there. Whoa. Even the dog agrees.
Sorry.
Cute. Okay. Are there any other comments Okay. Then I'm going to move on to our next discussion item, which is our special ed model and continuation of services. Dr. Young?
Yeah, I would like to welcome Miss Julie Corona this evening, our Director of Special Ed and Student Services. Will be her second report on the change in our special education model and our effort to continue to update and provide information on this new model. And tonight she'll, you know, remind us of the why and why we took this on and the elements that are a little bit different in this model. And just to let the community know that our absolute commitment and partnering with everybody around this effort is to make sure that we do our level best to meet the needs of our special education students. So welcome, Ms. Corona, this evening. And is she on mute? Swear. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Ms. Corona.
And I just took down, I realized I was taking control of the screen and she's going to do her own. So we're just switching.
Okay. No, I
That's
noticed
okay.
that nobody's given me that right to do that yet, which is probably a good idea.
I was trying to look for the mouse. I was like, where is it? Good evening, everyone. And let me just share my screen. So good evening, Mrs. Ferrucci, board members, and Dr. Young. Thank you for having me. So this presentation I presented back in May on the new continuum of services. So with this presentation, I will be going into detail of the why for the shift of the continuum of services. And I will also be sharing how services will be providing starting August 17th. I know Dr. Beaton is also going to discuss that. Before I start, I do want to say that thank you for all the parents. I've met with many parents. Dr. Beaton and I have met with parents, and I understand their concerns. And even though the parents were not part of the special education task force, moving forward, I want to say that we will work in partnership with the community, and we'll develop a special education committee so that all stakeholders have an opportunity to take part at the table. Okay, so why the shift? After reviewing our student performance and analyzing our special education services, a group of professionals looked at how BUSD is currently in compliance with both federal and state law, as well as meeting individual student needs, educational and behavioral. By developing an option of continuum of services, students who need specialized academic instruction in a specific skill set via a small setting, or to have be able to focus better and is not benefiting from full participation in general ed, then such option of continuum of services are available and considered to ensure students continue successfully accessing gen ed. So with this new shift, we are addressing both federal and state law, as well as meeting educational and behavioral needs. So this, what data led the decision to shift our continuum of services? So basically, here we have both 2019 and 2018. And the way that this works is that during the 2019 school year, it's collecting data from 2018-2019. And then from the 2018, it's collecting data from the 2017-2018. So it is a year behind on the data. So for the past 2 years, we have looked at state assessments and California dashboard. So even though suspensions have decreased, we continue to be under progress monitoring in this area. And by addressing behavior needs in our new continuum of services, the student will successfully participate in gen ed and benefit from that full participation. So this data shows in 2019, 5.6% of students with disabilities were suspended at least once. There was an improvement from 2018 to 2019, because in 2018 we were in the red, and in 2019 we ended up in the yellow. However, we continue to be under progress monitoring through CDE because we're still out of compliance in this area. Another data point was chronic absenteeism. That is another data point that was considered when analyzing the continuum of services. We did increase. We show that from 2018, it was at 12.5%, and it increased. I know it shows a decrease, but actually lower numbers is better. So we went from orange to yellow. So BUSD has been out of compliance in students with disabilities not participating in SBAC. And SBAC is better known as state assessments. And those that do not participate, those that do participate, we have shown that only 19% have either met or exceeded in ELA and math. So even though it has been a 4% increase from 2018, BUSD is still under progress monitoring through CDE. So what does that mean? Progress monitoring means that the State Department asks the districts who show deficit in these areas, they ask that districts develop a plan on how they will show students improving in participation in this statewide assessment. Even though statewide assessment for SBAC is only capturing grades 3rd through 8th and 11th graders, another data collection that was taken into account for the continuum of services was from the K2 grade levels. The data collected was based from IEP goals and classroom participation, and also how the benefit from the general ed was and how successful the students were. So moving forward, we will have a district-wide assessment that will give us additional data. So as to how students are making progress every year, we will be able to compare from year to year. This assessment will be a K-12 assessment. Just to give you a little demographics of what we currently have, students on IEPs, we have 455 students in IEPs, and it changes. Technically, it changes when we're in school. It changes almost every day because students either when they get tested, they're eligible and they get an IEP, or they're tested and they're no longer eligible, and then they're exited from special education. So the numbers tend to move frequently. The majority of our disabilities in the districts, it varies from, we have 13 disabilities, but the majority varies from specific learning disability, autism, other health impairment, emotional disturbance, and speech and language impairment. So if we're looking at both federal and state law, and I mentioned that part of the shift was to alignment for BUSD to be in full alignment. So both federal and state law not only support full inclusion, but also require that LEAs shall have a continuum of service options to offer students with disabilities when the student is not fully benefiting from full-time and general education. This supports the why and the shift to the new continuum of services. So if we look here, this is quoted directly from federal law and California education law. We have this is the why as far as the continuum of services. Okay, so this is a sample of a continuum of services. It's just a visual representation. I don't know if the red circle is showing or if that's just on my screen. So if you notice here, we always have students starting in general education. And if 100% in general education is not benefiting the student and not meeting student needs, then other options in the continuum of services are considered. So the other options of the continuum of services are considered once all resources have been exhausted within the general education setting, and the student is making very limited progress. So these decisions are only made by the IEP team. And some of the questions asked when we're considering options of services is, what does the student need? What is the educational benefit for the student? And where will the student experience success? So, and looking at let's take a closer look at specialized academic services. Here you see, we always start with general education. As mentioned before, BUSD is a firm believer that students benefit from being with their typically developing peers. However, if services within the gen ed setting are not benefiting the student in both academics and behavior, then the IEP team looks at other service options. to better meet the student needs. The next step would be general education with pull-out support. Data is continued to be collected. The IEP team continues to monitor progress and then determining what is benefiting the student to such services. So these are just examples of resource support, pull-out support, accommodations, modified curriculum, but there is a variety of supports in how specialized academic instruction can be provided. But this is a sample of how the services, we start within general education, and then we assess and collect data and look at services outside if needed. Now, if we look at the continuum of services, we're looking at the intensive specialized academic instruction and then the behavior instruction. So after attempting services in the least restrictive setting and exhausting all of the resources in resource support, then the IEP team would then meet and look at what else can we offer the student. So services can be increased slowly, and that's how it normally is. Services are increased, and then we are looking at how we can best meet those specific academic skill sets within each service. So all of these services are available if and only the student is not benefiting and making progress from 100% in general education. We do consider if the student receives the support within the general ed setting and is making the progress and is benefiting, then the IEP team would not be recommending to increase services in a separate setting. So services are only recommended by the IEP team. So we have, we're looking at the continuum of services, and we have self-contained with general education. We do have several self-contained classrooms. These are just some of the target areas that we look at in these self-contained classrooms. However, every student is unique and every IEP is individualized. So we have the academic learning, we have the SDs, the special day class at the middle school, and then we have the skill class. So we do focus on different needs depending on the setting and the need of the student. So if the student is needing communication skills and requires the social interaction, then that's based on the IEP. So IEPs are written according to the individualized need. This circle, the red one, is the most restrictive, and this is the non-public school. I didn't include the residential, but the residential is also part of this most restrictive. So if you notice in this one, when we say most restrictive, normally non-public schools and residentials are in a very separate facility outside of the district. We look at segregating. These students that attend these non-public schools are segregated. They are secluded facilities. They have no access to typically developing peers or students without disabilities. They have no interaction, no lunch, no recess with students without disabilities. This is a very secluded and segregated program and service when we are talking about non-public schools and residential facilities. And these placements are normally done through an IEP meeting. And it is rare that an IEP meeting would jump from resource support or from a special day class to a non-public school. We want to keep our students within our district, so we do everything we possibly can, whether it's training staff on additional methodologies, providing, if it is a behavior component, providing additional supports from the district behaviorist in order to avoid any recommendation to a non-public school.
Dr. Corona, is it possible for students to move within the levels of support based on their talents and skills and their needs?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes. So it just depends if the student is doing well and the data is reflecting they're benefiting on the type of services that they're receiving. There is no reason why the IEP team would be recommending a separate setting or more time outside of the general ed. The bottom line and the ultimate goal is for students to be most of the time in general ed, if not 100%.
Okay.
So guidelines for services, these are just guidelines that are on a case-by-case basis. Since each student is unique, services do begin in general education, and once all resources are exhausted, then the IEP team will meet to discuss other options. So we look at the continuum of services. Federal and state law do say, if we look at bullet number 3, it does state that the nature of severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So that is one of the things why the shift to the new continuum of services. We have several options of meeting student needs, whether it's full-time in general ed or sometime in general ed and a little bit of time outside of general ed or addressing specific skill set areas. Some of the services, how they might be provided, and this is not just an inclusively list. There are many other options, but I just wanted to mention a few. In the general ed, we have the consultation between the two educators, special ed and general ed. If that's not enough, then we look at the push-in support, whether it's an aide, whether it's the special education teacher coming into the classroom. And if that's not enough, we look at now, okay, maybe we do push-in support with an aide, but we also have pull-out support in either small group, and that's led by the special education teacher, or in a one-on-one basis in the separate setting. So we look at all the different services, but with the mindset that we believe that students belong in general education first. So here, as I've stated throughout the presentation, BUSD's philosophy continues to be inclusion. Students are always first in general education, and then services are provided according to individual needs. Once everything has been attempted to keep them 100% general ed, and if that is not meeting the needs, then the new continuum of services is not to seclude students from their peers, but to address the specific skill sets or deficits that they need targeting and they need more work on. So then those are worked on in a separate setting by the special education staff. So the downfall in the new continuum of services is that some students may not attend their home school. However, we were already facing that issue when we had the inclusion specialist, because we only had it at 3 schools and not at all 4 schools. So it is unfortunate that we cannot provide all services on the continuum at each school site because we're a smaller district and we don't have a whole lot of students that require those intensive services. It is on a case by case. So this slide, it mainly is talking about August 17th, the reopening of the school. I just thought I'd share briefly. Dr. Beatson is going to also talk about this, but special education teachers will continue to meet the needs of students with disabilities. We will have a more robust service model. Our special education teachers will provide synchronous instruction between 30 and 60 minutes on a daily basis. And how is that going to look? So the way that that's going to look is we're looking at the instruction, either to introduce a lesson, to introduce a new topic on targeting a goal. And then the case manager later during the day will have another time slot for students to check for understanding, to continue on synchronous instruction, and work on either generate assignments or answer questions from the students after they've had a chance to work on goals. And this is where the special education teachers will also be collecting data and monitoring the goals. Paraprofessionals will also assist in breakout sessions and work with small groups or one-on-one instruction, and that's going to be on a daily basis. So it does vary from how we were providing services back in the spring. Related services may be offered through this phase model of instruction. We are looking at the IEP, the frequency on the IEP, and students will be receiving their services, whether it's 30 minutes a week or 60 minutes a week. And it could vary depending on what the IEP says. It'll be on a one-on-one basis or a small group. Usually speech therapists and occupational therapists, they do provide packets and just as a practice, but it's not going to be a replacement of the therapy. In addition to that, services will be tracked, progress will be monitored, and pre and post assessments will be conducted to determine the baseline, and then look at that growth during this time of virtual learning. So that concludes my presentation. Once again, I thank you for having me.
I just have a quick question for you, please. I wanted to know, I know you indicated at the beginning that you have, you are going to make sure that you include a nice communication with parents so that they kind of know what's going on and they're in the loop. Now, have you mapped out like days or anything yet, or is that still kind of a work in progress? And is it going to be all of the parents, or is it going to be, how are you going to decide how that's going to work?
So the meetings that I had with the parents, we talked about that, and we haven't decided. We did talk a little bit about having like just a selection. Obviously, we couldn't have like all parents in a committee, but just a selection to represent parents with students with disabilities. But honestly, given the circumstances right now, we have not started on how to go about that.
I'm muted again. So I also understand, Dr. Corona, that there will be, I know it's part of the plan, but the IEPs will also be happening at appropriate intervals so that parents and services and general ed people will be able to get together in order to make that happen. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We do have to continue to be in compliance. Same thing goes with the assessments. When the closures of schools happened, there was a waiver. We had to stop assessments, but we are looking at having a plan to conduct those assessments, because we do have, out of those, so we have 455 students that are currently eligible, and we have 33 students that are pending, waiting to be tested. So we are looking at that piece as well, obviously taking the precautions of safety.
But there are students that need to be tested in their cycle because of the COVID that we had to waive and push up. Okay.
Every 3 years, and then parents, some parents, they have the right to request for assessment. So some parents have asked for that. So yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get a clear understanding of where we were with that. Are there any other questions for Mrs. Corona? All right. Thank you for your presentation. I actually really appreciated that in this format tonight. For me, it was much clearer, and I felt like I got a better understanding of our service. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corona.
Okay, Dr. Young, the next thing on our discussion agenda is actually our COVID budget.
Right, I'd like to turn this over to our trusted CBO, Mr. Ray Hill, to give us a picture of our budget landscape. I'd like to say, fortunately, a little better positioned than what we had been talking about previously. So welcome, Mr. Ray Hill.
Thank you so much, and good evening. We're here tonight to provide you the information since the state budget has been finalized and the governor has signed the state budget for our upcoming 2020-21 school year. And we briefly mentioned the state budget 2 weeks ago at our special board meeting on July 9th. And we're here to provide a little bit more information. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll walk through the pocket budget, which highlights the state adopted budget. Okay, on the screen, you should see the pocket budget for 2020-21, and this is the summary analysis of the enacted state budget for California schools. It's provided by the School Consulting Firm of School Services of California, and I'll talk through the highlights from the state adopted budget and how that impacts our Benicia School District. So I'll just start with this state adopted budget was adopted towards the end of June and signed by the governor. And just 1 month prior to that, the governor came out with his May revised budget, which is a draft budget that they start with before they finalize it and sign it in June. And it ended up being significantly different than the governor's May revise, where in his May revise, he was proposing to actually take funding away from California schools through a negative 8% COLA. And that was a financial hit to our district and all the other districts in the state. And you and the community might remember we had started sharing the financial impact from that May revised budget and putting a multi-year plan together in regards to budget adjustments. Well, when the governor met with the state legislature and they were working on a final budget for him to sign, they agreed to record sufficient California revenues to provide a flat funding to schools. And one of the ways that they're planning on doing that right now is providing school districts and other public agencies cash deferrals, which are basically IOUs, if needed in the second half of the fiscal year from January through June, basically, or February through June. And so even though the state is promising to pay us, they might not have the cash at that time. And we would be working with our county office to secure some short-term financing to pay our monthly bills in the latter part of this year. The one hope is that the governor and the other states will be successful in getting another federal COVID-19 package from the federal government. And if that came to California and it was passed on to the school districts, then that the plan right now would be that would minimize those cash deferral IOUs. But that has yet to happen, and we will stay posted to see if that does actually get passed by the federal government. So here we are. We have a significantly different state adopted budget, and on this first page, it's a 2-page pocket budget. I'll just mention that as part of that ruling, just a week or two ago, the governor and Benicia Unified will be following that guidance of 100% distance learning to start the school year when the student's first day of school is August 17th. And the next item about reopening school, Dr. Beatson will go into more detail about distance learning. Up until this year, the district was preparing its local control accountability plan called the LCAP, and that talked about all the great things we do in our district. And because of the COVID-19, it's making it difficult for districts to come through on their LCAP plan. And so we don't have to do that for 2021, but we do have to do a new plan, and it is called the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan and Accountability. So they refer to this one as the LCP, and Dr. Beatson is also working with all of us and the school community to put together our LCP, which will be presented to the school board in September. We'll do an information item and then an action item to talk about what we're doing in the current 2021 school year in regards to providing programs to our students. We heard a great presentation tonight from June Regis, our Director of Child Care and Preschool, who is starting small to make sure we're doing it right with those programs. And in the state budget, there are some hold harmless clause, which will provide funding based on last year so that Ms. Regis and her staff can continue to provide childcare and preschool under the current guidelines. So that puts the pressure off a little bit in regards to those programs collecting fees and other revenues to make the program self-supporting. In that state budget, there were also some protections on staff, which prevented school districts from laying off certificated employees and most classified staff. So in an effort from the governor and the state passing a budget that was basically flat funding, they wanted a commitment from school agencies that they would hold off on layoffs, at least for the upcoming 2021 school year. So I'm just going to flip to page 2 of the pocket budget. And basically, this introduction talks about the governor and signing a final budget that's significantly different than the May revise. Our funding, our school funding is guided by the state's Proposition 98, which calculates how much money comes to the schools each year. I mentioned at the beginning about the cost of living adjustment that the state of California provides each year. And because of the financial crisis, it went from a negative 8% to 0% between May and June. And so it basically means it's flat funding. And so instead of our district taking a multi-million-dollar financial hit, we're not facing that in the budget year based on the state adopted budget. And we're continuing to monitor the state budget and the economy and impacts on schools so that we can, start early preparation in case the economy doesn't turn around as quickly as some hope. In addition to the cost of living adjustment being zero or flat funding, the state is also holding districts harmless into how they fund them. Normally, we take attendance every day and we get funded on how many kids attend our school. And the state is allowing us to, we're still required to take attendance, but as funding goes, we'll be relying upon last year's attendance. There is also some flexibility in regards to how the instructional day is structured when we're doing the distance learning. And I believe Dr. Beatson will go into a little bit more about that with the reopening. This last section, I only have a few more sections on our local control funding formula. That's how the state funds schools based here in California and based on student attendance. So from the negative 8% to the flat funding, that will bring in, or we were counting on a loss of funding of about $3.2 million. And so because that's not happening, we will not have to start a multi-year budget cut plan in the budget year. We were planning on cutting, or our target was a $2 million budget cut adjustment for the 2021 year. And because the state has passed a flat funding budget, at least for the upcoming 2021 school year, we are not faced with faced with that multi-million-dollar budget cut in year one. We do have vacant positions that we've reviewed and feel like we are able to maintain those positions as vacant. And so that will provide us some security in regards to operating during the 2021 school year. I think it's important, and probably each time you hear from me about the finances in this upcoming school year, you'll hear this cash deferral, which is basically a state IOU. Again, it really doesn't kick into the second half of this fiscal year from January or February to June. And so we have time to work with our county office to secure any short-term borrowings that we might need, and also hear back from the federal government as to whether they're going to provide us additional monies. So that would limit the amount of IOUs we receive.
Mr. Rahil, I'm reading correctly. After the month of January, we will be put on a deferral from that point on through the rest of the school year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yikes. Thank you.
There is some local relief measures that apply to different school districts on top, some things you can do locally on top of what the state and the feds are providing. So we're able to tap into that. Our employee unions were part of the state retirement plans for both CalSTRS and CalPERS for all of our employees. And the governor did pass a budget with reduced rates that were required to contribute. They changed a little bit with the state adopted budget, but they were already reduced in the May revise. So there was some small savings there. But eventually, in the outer years, at this point in time, because we're basically getting a reduced rate this year and a little bit next year, the rate kicks back up in the third year out. So we have to plan to cover those costs in year three. In regards to special education, we heard a great presentation tonight from Ms. Corona. We are part of a special ed regional group. Every school district must belong to a regional group. We're part of the Solano County Special Ed Group. So all of our funds flow through that agency, and they go from the state to that agency and then out to the members. And so those funds, there are some additional funds going there. It just so happens that group did change the way that it allocates the funds out. And we will be facing a reduction of about $350,000 or so based on the change of allocation. So we did know about that in April and May with the May revise coming. And so we did budget that loss in funding, and there wasn't anything to our knowledge that changes that based on the final adopted budget. So the last piece on the big updates is this learning loss mitigation funding, and Governor Newsom, when he signed the budget, included this new requirement of districts reporting out how they're mitigating learning loss due to the COVID-19. And Dr. Beatson, again, working with the schools and the community, is kind of putting that together. This will be a section. Again, a lot of new terms and a lot of new items being mentioned tonight, but this learning loss mitigation will be a section in that LCP, that new plan we're required to present to you in September. So we'll let you know what our school district is doing to mitigate learning loss. And a big part of this is the governor wants us to report out and show how we're now using the federal government's existing one-time funding. So the federal government has passed a couple funding sources for California schools, and through the adopted budget, Governor Newsom worked with the legislature to decide how they're going to allocate that to schools. And so at the May revise, we were unsure whether Benicia would receive any kind of considerable amount from that. And the way that they ended up in the final budget was more than what we were expecting at the May revise time, because it's not primarily allocated to schools based on their unduplicated percentage of students in the free and reduced lunch program or EL or homeless youth. It's a variety of allocated methods, which is actually providing us more funding to the tune, again, it's one time, but it's about $2.3 million. So it's significant funds. It's from the federal government. They are one time in nature, but they're meant to for school districts to put a plan together, for the most part, to mitigate learning loss. There's a percentage of the funds that are also available to provide for any type of COVID-19 related activity. And so we're working on that for us, for you now. I'll let you know that a big part of that will most likely be technology and providing the appropriate technology for our students and for our staff to make this for a successful year. And so I guess I just want to wrap up with the with how the state adopted budget. Basically, there's 2 or 3 main things. Is that Governor Newsom signed a state budget that was significantly different than his May revised budget. It provided a 0% COLA versus a negative 8% COLA. And in doing so, that basically eliminates the need for our district to consider starting a multi-year budget cut plan in the 2021 school year. We will be following up with you with our learning continuity plan that includes this section on learning loss mitigation. And a big part of that will be how we're proposing to spend our federal one-time funds. And again, that will be about $2.3 million. So I guess it's good news. We're cautious because we're not excited about the cash deferral IOUs, but we have enough time again to work with our county and to see what the feds are going to do, if anything, to put a plan together to get through the entire fiscal year for 2021.
So, Tim, can I ask another question?
Please.
I know Dr. Beatson is going to talk about the technology piece, but can you also address, I see on that learning loss mitigation funding, it talks about child nutrition. We did a phenomenal job, I think, with reaching out to feed children through our distance learning and, the summer feeding program. But what about now? Are we going to still be held to only free and reduced lunch? Are we talking about expanding it again? Where's the district with that, or what is the current thinking?
Yeah, great question. And that decision has not been made yet. Right now, Miss Courtney, our Director of Food Service, she's attending all of the state meetings. And at this point in time, the free student meal for all, that was just for last year. And okay. At this point, the direction is starting the school year. If you do qualify for a free or reduced meal, please fill out the application that you can find on the district's website. And you would, if you qualify, get a free or reduced meal. If you don't, then you would be subject to the paid price. I just want to say, however, we know that topic is being discussed right now, and it is possible that the federal government and the state will reinstate possibly a free meal for all students regardless of income status, but that decision has not been made yet. As we talk about reopening schools in regard to student meals, at this point in time, it'll be similar to what we had last year because it's all distance learning. we would do what's referred to as the grab and go.
Right.
They would come by, and it would be a lunch and a breakfast, potentially for the student to pick up for that day.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Rahill? Tim, I really appreciate you keeping us as current as you possibly can with our budget. And I know pretty soon we're going to be getting more information as revenues are coming in or taxes are coming in, and then we will be having a real budget to vote on shortly. Isn't that correct?
That is, yes. As taxes, the current tax deadlines are happening, they report out on tax revenue collections.
Okay, right. Thank you. Okay, with our last discussion item tonight, last but not least, is going to be our curriculum department with Dr. Beetson. Dr. Young, would you like to share anything before she begins?
Sure. Just thank you. Just to welcome Dr. Beetson tonight. This is her another in-depth presentation on the learning plan. I believe in the past when Dr. Beetson presented, she gave a kind of an overall view of what several models could look like from virtual to hybrid. Tonight, she will be focusing on the elements of the virtual model, and there's lots of information in here, and I know that there's probably several people watching tonight anxious to hear about this. And we'll also work on our end to put together a communication plan in a written form, as I said in a letter that I put out to the public when we made the decision to go virtual. So we'll get that out to folks. I just want to also reiterate that as we go through this, like all districts, you work with your teachers union, your bargaining unit members, and so we are working on that process with our group, with BTA, making just terrific progress with them, and we're just about done with the document. It's called MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, which recognizes all of the elements in this that affect any working conditions. So just want to point out that we appreciate that strong partnership that we have with our both bargaining units, particularly because we've been spent so much time with the teachers on this piece. So we're almost finished with that, but I think it's important for me to note that we're still working on that part. So welcome, Dr. Beetson. Dr. Beetson, I think you might be on mute.
Yep, I think I just fixed that. Thank you very much. Thank you, President Ferrucci, Dr. Young, cabinet members, and school board. I'm really excited to be here tonight to present the next iteration of what schools will look like when we open on August 17th. And before I begin, I want to just give a shout out to my team, Miss Lisa Golson. She's a teacher on special assignment. She's here with us this evening, and Mrs. Stephanie Rice, our coordinator of Ed Services. They have been working with our amazing teaching staff around the clock since school let out in June through this summer to put this model together, to work together, and professional learning and all the different components for our staff so that we have a really successful opening of school. So I wanted to just say that, and they're going to help me present this this evening. So tonight, I'm going to review with you what the virtual learning plan will be. That's the plan we'll go in depth with, because that's where we will be starting on August 17th. And I will cover some additional pieces that I didn't cover last time, or cover them more in depth. A little bit more about special education. You heard from Mrs. Corona already. Learning loss and intervention and what that will look like. Student wellness, attendance, sports, extracurricular, and professional learning. And the other thing that we will do is give a glimpse into what a day might look like. I do want to stress, and I'll stress it again when we get to that point, that those are just mock-up samples to give people an idea of something they may expect when school starts. They are not set in stone. Our teachers and our sites will do that, but just to really understand what the difference will be as we come back this August. Just to remind you that that virtual learning is one component of a multi-model plan, because we are really hopeful that we get to come back in person at some point during this school year, either in small groups or everything lining up. We get to come back full time. And we had a great team that helped put this plan together in its entirety. And so this is one small component of that. And I want to give a shout out to folks who gave up their time for that work as well. As of course, everything we do in our district is guided by our district vision and belief statements and characteristics of a Benicia graduate. These are challenging times and things will look different than they have looked in the past. And we are working really hard to ensure that the high quality that Benicia is known for continues throughout this fall and year. These other were key drivers as we looked at what does education look like as we open up again this fall. So every model, the virtual model and all the other models that we have sort of in our back pocket for when the time comes that we can open up, are mirrored up against these key drivers and guiding principles. So when schools come back in the fall on August 17th, they will look different. And here's what we can expect. And I want to take a moment just to pause and talk a little bit about why it will look different. It wasn't that what we did from March until June was wrong. But if we think about that model as emergency distance learning, we had little to no time to prepare for it. I think we started within 48 hours of closing. There were no state attendance requirements, which means we didn't need to take attendance every day. There were no statewide or local assessments given last year. We used a modified grading system and live instruction was not required. So when we talk about learning will look different through virtual learning coming on August 17th, we have had the opportunity to plan some structured virtual learning. Though I will also put in this caveat, up until late last week, we were still banking on the fact that we could come back 50%. And on Thursday and Friday last week, the decision was made by our district and the governor that the governor made the mandate that we are on the watch list and cannot do that. So we had to shift quickly to put more emphasis again on the virtual piece. And so that was a quicker turnaround as well. However, this fall will be a structured virtual learning, and I'll get into the detail about what that will look like. But I just want to put people's mind at ease when we say things will look different. It wasn't that we're trying to say people worked really hard this spring, but this fall have different requirements. So as I said, we will start here with virtual learning. We still have these other hybrid models, both hybrid and in-school learning. I know we've used the word phases. Sometimes we're trying to be consistent with models. They are not directly aligned to the state phase-in returns, but they are models for when we can come back at the different levels. And so some of the other pieces that have guided the work to make sure that we are doing our very best to provide a robust instructional platform and learning environment for when children come back in August is guided by the governor's plan that came out on Friday, and then Senate Bill 98, which outlines requirements for safe reopenings of schools. So one of the things that we'll talk a lot about tonight is this safe in-person school based on the local health data. And the governor told us on Friday that if we are on the monitoring list, we cannot open for in-person instruction, and Solano is on the monitoring list. And I think Dr. Young talked earlier about being off of that for 14 days or showing a decline for 14 days before we can consider coming back in person. This next piece I left on here, but I put a flag over it that says it will be revisited as we prepare to move into a hybrid model, because it really talks about hybrid. And so I don't want to lose that part, but that will all need to be relooked at as we get closer to being able to move into hybrid. And this talks about how we return and what happens if we have anyone test positive. And so we'll go into more depth as we get ready to move into a hybrid model. And that's the same for these two components of the governor's plan as well, which was about mask requirements and physical distancing. And then this idea of regular testing and contact tracing. So that all has to do with when we can come back in person. So we'll revisit that at that time. The other piece that is in the governor's plan is this, the outline of rigorous distance learning and what that needs to look like. And so there are 4 target points. One is devices and connectivity, that we need to provide that. Daily live instruction, and I'll talk more about what that will look like for every child with teachers and other students. Class assignments that are challenging, and we're going to do our very best to make them equivalent to when in-person instruction is happening, even though things may need to look different. We want that equity of experience. And then targeted supports and interventions for English learners and special education students. I do want to let you know that in BUSD, we will be offering targeted supports for students who are struggling and meet the identified criteria, as well as students in those 2 student groups. And just a note about this, and I can talk about it more later. I know there were several comments about Chromebooks, and that is, we have an order being placed as we speak for Chromebooks so that every student in Benicia Unified will have one, a district issued Chromebook. The only caveat with that is the manufacturers are quite backed up at this time, so we're working with our resources to try to get them here as fast as possible. And we were able to do that because of that federal learning loss mitigation funding that Mr. Rahill discussed earlier. So based on those guidance from the governor and the Senate bill, we've made some commitments to student success for this upcoming school year. We most certainly want to continue and expand on our robust virtual learning. One of the things that we will hear about is this expanded curricula and essential standards work that is happening to help with consistency across the school district. And then we're also talking very closely with our mental health coordinator and looking at how can we provide mental health support and connectedness for students in this time of virtual learning. Another piece that we are committed to and working closely with our teachers union on is synchronous and asynchronous live interaction, and that's what the Senate bill calls for, and learning daily, including attendance and accountability. So one of the things that will be very different as we come back is that attendance is required each and every day, and so teachers will be taking attendance through their classes, and we'll have a process for what that will look like. And synchronous learning is really when people are all learning together. And so it may be whole class or it may be small group, depending on the grade level and the developmental appropriateness of that. The other piece of distance learning is asynchronous. So some of the time kids will be learning together in a synchronous, same time fashion, and other times they will have work to do independently on their own. I already talked about making sure that every student has a device, and we are working on, or we will be reaching out to make sure that families have internet access that is reliable. And we will be using Google Classroom across the district so that we have a common platform for families. Some of this, most of this is in the governor's plan and the Senate bill, and others is information that we had gotten from families and we wanted to really address through the different surveys that we had gotten. The other piece that we are committed to is ongoing assessments. So our we did not administer the SBAC assessment, the statewide assessment last year. That was postponed by the state. Ms. Corona talked about a new assessment system that we will be putting in place so that we have an idea and are ensuring that students are learning, and when they're not learning, we can address their needs right away. And we'll hear more about that ongoing assessment system tonight. Interventions and supports, we will be working with our intervention teams and teachers to find ways to provide expanded time for intervention and supports for students who need it, and it's very targeted, and it happens in addition to their synchronous learning in their classroom. Expanded communication with families, we are committed to continuing to update families as we go through, collect feedback on how we're doing. And so that is something else that we're committed to. And then lastly, professional learning, knowing that this structured virtual learning environment looks very different. We have time to plan. And so our teachers have access to a robust set of learning experiences focused on a lot of different topics I'll talk about later on, but we will continue that throughout the school year as well.
All right. Are you ready for me to jump in?
Go right ahead.
All right, Stephanie Rice, and I am going to share with you what we have done thus far and what we are currently working on so that we are geared up for a really positive school year. We have ensured that we have a teacher for every class, and we're also working on a system for covering unexpected teacher absences. We have been working with an amazing group of teachers in that, can you go back one slide, Dr. Beatson? I'm sorry. Thank you. On essential standards, identifying the essential standards that I'll talk more about in a moment, and support curriculum. And then we also have been doing background work. There is a lot of work behind planning for using universal screening tools that Lisa Golson will talk to you about in a little bit, as well as a data analytics platform and our student information system we have upgraded. All right, next one. And then our wonderful IT department, thank you to them. They have been working diligently on making sure our bandwidth is up to speed. They're working on creating a support system for families when they're having problems with technology. And then as well as we have developed and have already deployed some professional learning that I'll go into a little more depth in a bit. And then what we also are currently working on, Dr. Beatson talked about ensuring that we have devices for our students and also what that meal service will look like. And then we are developing training for families to support the technology use at home, as well as some of the platforms that we will be using. We also have been updating specific behavior standards. You know, what does it look like to learn in a virtual environment, and also coming up with universal platforms such as Google Classroom Performance Matters, and we will talk more in depth about our NWEA MAP platform. So Dr. Beatson mentioned a little bit about this earlier. We worked with teams of teachers. We started out with elementary, and the purpose for starting there is because we have 4 individual sites, and we made it a priority to become much more unified in what we will be doing in the 2020-2021 school year. This came back from, feedback from teachers, feedback from families. We had a volunteer group of teachers from our kindergarten through 5th grade group that identified essential standards. And identifying the essential standards there are several standards to be taught in a year, but there are essential standards for every grade level that have to really be targeted. So our amazing Lisa Golson created this document here with our team, and what it has here is it's going to be a workable document where teachers and grade levels or departments can make copies. This happens to be a 6th grade literacy standard document. It gives you the standard. It gives you the anchor standard, the bigger picture of what it's connected to. It also provides essential skills that need to be taught under this standard. Academic vocabulary that we know is highly important both in English and in Spanish. It gives question stems, which is great for helping with scaffolding for our students. And then at the very bottom, you'll see that it gives the standards that it connects to from the previous grade. There happens to be a standard that it builds upon from 5th grade. And if it's a continued standard into the next grade, it will give you the next grade and how it connects. Also working with this group of teachers, they requested that they loved this document to work from, but they also wanted something. If you can click on Dr. Beatson, the red index, they requested that Lisa create an index. Basically, this will be the cover sheet of what they have for those standards documents. And what you see here, this one is an example of 5th grade. It has the 5th grade math standards off to the left. And then it gives you our core curriculum. The EM is everyday mathematics. All of the lessons that target those standards by unit by lesson. And then I'll speak in a little bit, but we also identified some supplemental materials to make virtual learning more accessible. So that's that ZERN mission.
So can I ask?
Absolutely, jump on in.
So in terms of the essential standard, it's not like everything's been chosen yet, because I remember in the spring, there was definitely a necessity to pare down what you were going to try to cover. So am I assuming that we're still looking to pare down what we're trying to cover in terms of the distance learning? Or are we trying to cover as much as we would be in a standard year where everybody's in the classroom?
We're definitely focusing in on the essential standards. So elementary has finished this. We're currently working with middle school and high school. For example, the math department, Lisa Golson, has been working with their department chairs on looking into their 4x4 model and doing that semester approach and how to pace. Honestly, every year should be looked at by really identifying the essential standards. I like to consider that as like the meat and potatoes, right, of what we do.
Right.
And then everything else is, the gravy and the sides, important, but not your focus. So especially in this virtual learning, we want to make sure we're really targeted on what we're doing in our instructional time.
And with the 4x4, you're going to have to let some stuff go because you're just not going to have as much time. So
Absolutely.
when will this be? Will this be done? These decisions made before school starts, so that when the teachers come in, they know what to focus on, or is this still going to be work in progress once school starts?
Our hope is that it will be done. That is our plan. Elisa Golson and I, have been working diligently with the teachers on that. And it's the two of us, so we're working with the levels. And we started again with elementary because they're 4 separate sites, and right now different departments are coming together. And then we, when I get to professional learning, we do have a day set aside that we shifted our professional learning day from January, moved it to the beginning, basically turning that over to the teachers where they put in what their plan is as a department or a grade level to their site leaders, and we'll have time again to dig in there. So the hope is yes.
And at the moment, just to let you know, so at the moment, K through 8 is done and the drafts are out to teachers to review. So we've gotten K8.
That's all subject matters?
ELA and math. So we focused
ELA
on
and math, okay.
Reading, writing, math.
Yes,
okay.
And we've been working with middle school science and social studies on where they are. They're currently working on that as well. And then I know Brianna has been working with her groups of teachers as well. But as far as what Lisa and I, we've been working our way.
All right, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, this is kind of, I'll date myself by saying the Cliff Note version, but this gives teachers at a glance where they can find those units or lessons to address the standard. And right now, what we've done for elementary, because we have this new supplemental piece that will help with the digital platform, we're preparing like the notes, etc., for the teachers there. Not just us, but it's a team of teachers that have been volunteering to work with us this summer on this project. All right. We can go to the next one. And then with those essential standards, again, we're identifying, we're creating documents that have the subject matter, the core material, the supplemental material, as well as special ed material and assessments that we'll be using. We, again, like Lisa said, TK through 5 is done. Some of the groups still are working on pacing guides along with Lisa and myself. Middle school is currently working on that, and different departments at the high school. And then the next one. And then the other thing that we're working on for becoming unified across the district, which we started last year, is just having common platforms. So the Google Classroom will be our common platform for posting our assignments. This will be rolled out by our IT department, and it's going to help with that, identifying what we're going to do when and if teachers have to be out. So this allows for site principals to be able to take over a Google Classroom if needed, and it provides consistency of where the assignments will be posted, no matter whether they're in kindergarten or 12th grade. We also are providing training and support to our teachers on other G Suite tools, and this will also be a strong opportunity for teachers to be able to share the work that they're doing to keep consistent across, again, departments and grade levels. And then our IT and Ed Services department have been working diligently on many of our platforms, but Mr. Mike Sharif, we call him our clever man, as well as his dynamic duo, Lisa Golson, are kind of overseeing our Clever, which is our single sign-on system. And what we're doing now is, because we have time, I put in quotes, to plan, there's a curveball, at every turn, but we're trying to get as much as possible in this system. And what that allows students to do is kind of have a one-stop shop of, they'll go in Google Classroom, get their assignments, they'll log on, it takes them to Clever, and all their different platforms that they would be using will be loaded there. They won't have to go to separate sites. So that's what our team is currently working on. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Golson. She's going to present some things that are going to address some of the things that Tim and Leslie spoke on about our LCP and our learning loss mitigation. And she's going to share some of that.
So hello, I'm Lisa Golson, and I get to share two amazing new products that we've been working on for the last year, and just in time. They're here for us. This first one, the NWA map, is for assessment, and it's designed in multiple parts. There are growth assessments, there's quick checks, there's progress monitoring, there's fluency, there's all kinds of levels that are going to be available to teachers. The beauty of where we sit right now is that we piloted it last spring. We had been looking at a variety of programs, and we piloted this last spring. We piloted it at elementary, middle, and at high school. Because of technical glitches at high school, we actually had to pilot it in the way that it essentially will be pushed out to home. We were not able to use our Clever system at that time. So we've already tested, and we know it works. And I've been in conversations with NEA that we will be able to pass this directly to home portals. So students will be able to take assessments at home. Then teachers will be able to use the data very effectively to plan what they're going to do with those students. There's lots and lots of levels of information available. I provided the introduction to NWA is actually what we put out to teachers as part of our learning portal this last couple of weeks. So giving them a sense of what it is, since most teachers have not used it yet. The benchmark assessments can be given up to 4 times a year. We're not looking at those as any way of of creating grades. We're looking at that as a way of providing formative information for teachers immediately. So we know right where every student is out the gate, beginning of the school year. We can give that particular assessment 4 times a year, but then they can also drill down into lots of other areas. There's more here than I think anyone will want to ever do. The accessible data and reports, which is another link here, gives us, I believe there were 44 reports just on one assessment type. So there's a whole lot of information available for people to use. I know that the teachers who used it last year as part of their our pilot were really excited about the accessibility. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next one, Dr. Beatson. This is a typical student report. One of the things that's new on here for us is that this is a progress monitoring. So that means it has growth. So if a student starts taking it in kindergarten or 2nd grade or 3rd grade, it keeps track over the years. So as the student progresses in the system, that every single year that they're taking assessments, it adds on and you can see their growth over time. It's not just a one-shot snapshot from a particular school year. It actually shows the growth over time. They normed last year. So when they normed last year, they added in achievement. They've been doing it for a number of years, but they figured that they were finally at a point where they could not only provide growth data, but also achievement data. So the achievement data can be tied to SAT or SBAC or ACT, depending upon what view you would like and the age of the student. It can give you predictive information, and they're really, really accurate. Some of the information that I've been seeing in terms of what their achievement levels look like and how it aligns with what student progress is amazingly concise. It's really, really accurate. So if we're looking at large scale testing, it gives us a big window in how our students will achieve. Not usually particularly interesting to teachers on a daily basis. So if you go to the next one, I'll show you what we have for teachers. So in addition to the sort of big picture universal screeners that we can give to every student, we can also look at really granular information about whether it's a kindergartner who's learning to read or a student who we just got new to our district, whatever level they're at. We have all kinds of reports that are available. One of the things that was really exciting last year when we were checking it out and I was working with a fourth grade teacher was when she was able to assess her class. And as she's assessing them, it's putting kids into groups so she knew what to do with the next day's lesson. She could see which kids needed which level of instruction based on what she was going to do the following day. So within seconds, she was getting reports that were really actionable for her. Another part that we didn't pilot last year, but that's new for the NWEA, but we're excited about, is called Accelerator. So they've been working on this for a couple of years, and they finally rolled it out this last year. Again, perfect timing, where they've connected their assessments to some of the large scale, largely free, but not always, support programs. Khan Academy being an example, Lexia being an example, the learning A to Z that we're also looking at, and also several others that we're using, all connect to this accelerator. So teachers will not only get a report saying, your child needs work with this particular standard, and this is what they're ready for instruction tomorrow, but they'll also get some recommendations of, here's a lesson that they should be doing in Khan Academy or Lexia to support them. And that, if you're using Khan Academy as a teacher, it also cross-references your students, so you don't even have to assign it. As soon as the kid logs in, it says, oh, you're Johnny, you need this assignment. This is a practice for you. So that's one of the other things that we're really excited about offering, especially in this weird virtual world, that teachers will have access to it, students will have access to it, parents will have access to it. So there's lots going on here. If you go on to the next one. Thank you. So you get a little close up of the learning continuum. This is the one that the teacher was so excited about. And she was looking at, oh, wait, I'm doing informational reading tomorrow. What do I need to do with kids? What groups do I have? So if you're looking at the screen there on the left, it's telling you that you have certain students, and it's naming those kids that are at particular levels. The numbers that you see on the far left, those are called RTI. And essentially it's ready to instruct. This is where they're at today. This is what you need to be doing based on the data that we have for that particular student. So it helps you figure out what are your small groups and what do you need to do with those kids in the small group, right? So it's really actionable immediately for teachers to be able to see. This information is also you can sort it based on standards. So if you wanted to figure out, okay, a particular standard that I'm going to be teaching, what do my student continuum look like in terms of learning? How many groups am I going to need? Where do I want to start? Where am I going to end with that particular class of students based on this particular standard? Which, since we've been looking at essential standards, I think is really helpful, because we can say, well, it's great to have all this data, but I only need to worry about this particular standard right now. What does that look like? And this data can be presented in that format as well. On the right side was one that made me really excited, because I create these data pieces a lot. And that's sort of the district snapshot, being able to see what the predictive scores would be for students on a state assessment. This one happens to be Ohio, not ours, on the bottom, and ACT on the top, but you can do it for the SBAC or PARC or whatever assessment you're giving. And it gives you a snapshot based on whatever the benchmark data is that you have on your students. Where are they likely to score on this particular assessment? So that was cool. Next slide. Okay, the other piece that we have, well, questions about NWA, first of all, before I go on to the next one. You can tell I'm excited. I love this. it's so exciting to have the right tool at the right moment to offer people. Because,
Absolutely.
we know formative assessment is what's going to drive this next year. It's the way we'll be successful as teachers and the way we're going to be able to move students forward, and to have this tool at our fingertips is great.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are students that come from other districts, like how well used is this program throughout California? Like, are we going to be able to plug them right in?
Yes. The short answer is we're way behind.
Okay.
That was one of the things that was exciting when we dove into. We actually looked at a variety of programs, and when we sort of narrowed it down to the top 3, I started reaching out to who was around us, who could I get in contact with, Mount Diablo or Fairfield or whatever, and what were they using? And almost universally, it was NWEA. That was what was being used. In fact, Julie Corona came from a district that was using NWEA. One of our new administrators at the middle school, she came from a district that uses NWEA. So they were really excited that we were bringing it on board. They've had only universally positive things to say, no matter who I talk to.
It looks like a great tool.
Yeah.
If children are in this system in another district, can you pull their data over?
Yes. The data is tied to the child.
Nice.
Yes. The data is tied to the child. And that's part of that continuing growth model that they want to be able to share that information. And they've been doing this for some of the assessments. The growth assessment's been going for 50 years. So they've been doing a digital platform for 30 of those 50 years now. They've been around a long time and doing it right. Other question? Okay, the next one. Performance matters. We started working on this a year ago. It's been a long time coming. The good news is that we've been able to roll it out to our elementary teachers. They've had the opportunity to dig in and see their classes last year and manipulate information. So they do have some familiarity with what's there. Again, in this strange virtual environment that we're starting off, it will provide an opportunity for them to get to know their students. It will provide historical data. So up to 3 years worth of data is already in there, and we're adding to it all the time. You've seen this before, I know. This particular screenshot that you're looking at is actually a school level dashboard so that you can see attendance issues. We've added a bunch of things that weren't here previously. And most importantly, I think at this point, so I created an introductory for you guys so you can see all the different screens if you want to. All the different viewpoints, whether you're an administrator or you're a student or you're a teacher. We don't have the student portal open, but I wanted you to see what it looks like. So eventually we could have that. But that's one piece of sort of the puzzle that's going on. Go into the next one. I want to show you a little more depth.
Hey,
Here,
Lisa,
yes.
we probably can go a little bit faster through some of this. It's awesome, but we have also a ton more
I know.
to go through. So
Okay, so here's what teachers are going to use: being able to create their own assessments, test kids online, and report by standard. So this is the teacher dashboard. This happens to be from math class at the middle school, or sorry, this was the high school last year. It's my daughter's test scores, so she gave me permission to share. So that you can see, this is the kind of really valuable information that teachers will have at their fingertips. These are assessments that our teachers already at the high school are creating. We have training set up for September, the first week of September, so that other teachers can learn how to create their own online assessments. Next. Sawyer?
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
What does that Performance Matters do that the NWEA doesn't? It seems like they overlap a lot. They're two different, data systems. Mm-hmm. Would you use both, or would you choose one as a teacher?
NWEA are assessments, and it's assessments someone else has created. So yes, I would use those absolutely. And that data gets fed into Performance Matters. So when I look at Performance Matters, I'm seeing attendance, I'm seeing behavior, I'm seeing the SBAC scores, I'm seeing if the kid was EL learner, I'm seeing their LPAC scores. I'm seeing all of the data on the child, as well as the NWEA. So it pulls in every aspect of what's going on with the student. And I can see it for my entire class. So one of the nice things about Performance Matters is that I can go in and I can say, I want to see how my students with disabilities are doing on my NWA and then compare it to how they did on their SBAC. Okay, so I can look at student groups very quickly too.
Oh,
So I'll read it.
Okay. So the NWEA is just where you get your assessments, and then the performance matters is where you see the information from those assessments.
Yes.
And how well
So
the kids did.
it's where you can manipulate it and compare it and compare different data points, not just the NWA, which is academic assessment, right? So you can have academic assessment plus anything else you have.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this
Nice
is
job,
a
Lisa.
warehouse.
Thank you. Yes. So Performance Matters is the hub of all things.
Yes.
So really quickly, but it's really exciting. We have already put out professional learning to our staff, and we're calling it flex learning. So our teachers can choose to do their 7.2 hours of professional learning over the summer as requested from teachers that were saying, I'm home, let me do it now. And then that way, August 11th, if they've completed this, then that is their time to do whatever it is they so choose. And if they choose not to complete it, they'll then have August 11th to do this. And some of the topics that we have included, so we have a Google Classroom, and we have assigned the assignments to our teachers. There are mandatory and also optional. So if teachers want to dig in more depth, that there's more for them. And it's a plethora of choices from designing their virtual learning, again, focusing on equity and culturally responsive practices, the social emotional wellness. We have things on data and technology. There are special education training, as well as our mandated trainings that come from human resources that we are legally responsible to do. We've had really good feedback from teachers thus far. We are partnering with our Solano County Office of Ed to do some of this work, such as partnering with EPIC. Our district did some work. We presented on that earlier in the year to you, and that's where a lot of our equity work is coming from. And then as well as we were able to purchase all of our teachers the Summer Institute through BUSD. And it has so many different technology choices, from, creating your digital classroom to creating community digitally, are just a couple of the things offered. And, we required, I believe it was 2 hours under that platform, but they can do as much as they'd want. It's purchased for them, and it's open to them until October. So really excited about launching this professional learning and not just putting it to the side since we're in this COVID situation. Over to you, Dr. Beatson.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Golson and Ms. Rice, for that. I just want to take a quick second to kind of link it back to the governor's reopening plan and the Senate bill. So we heard about rigorous instruction and the work that we're doing to ensure that the instruction is focused, that teachers have the resources that they need, both for when we can come back in person and that work really well virtually. So we've been working on that, and we'll continue to do that work. And then the other big piece is really knowing where students are along the way so that we can provide intervention and supports as needed. And so that was why we felt this was an appropriate place to embed those components of the work that's happening into this reopening presentation. And so again, virtual learning will look significantly different than distance learning did in the spring. I talked about this quickly at the beginning. In the spring, we did emergency learning. Right now, we are shifting to structured virtual learning. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that will look like. So what to expect on August 17th. So students will be enrolled at their normal school and assigned to a school's bell schedule. Daily instruction, I talked about this before, will be both synchronous and asynchronous. And so what that means is if you're at the middle school or the high school, students will be expected to log in to their first period class when the teacher says, if first period is 8:30 to 9:30, the teacher may say, okay, all students every day, you're going to be logging in at 8:30, and they'll do their synchronous time, and then they'll have some time to do some independent or small group work, and then they'll have to log into second period and third period and so on. So that's a big shift from what this spring was that it will be much more structured with that daily instruction and interaction. We also are building out and working with our team on supports for students, including mental health supports, and those will be available in addition to the synchronous time that kids are in classrooms. We talked about this again. We will have an individual learning device. We will be going one-to-one, and our IT department has the order placed, and we are having our fingers and toes crossed that all those devices will get here in time. And we're going to work on a deployment process, and so parents can look for more information on that in the very near future. And we will also be soliciting feedback for households that need some connectivity, and we'll support them with that. Another big shift and why school will look different is that attendance will be taken each day for every class. So at the secondary level, in each period, it will be period attendance. At the elementary level, it will be, and we have a structure that we're putting in place. This is by ed code that we have to do this so that students can be present in their synchronous learning, and then we have to find ways to account for the actual classwork that they're doing as well. We will revert back to using our traditional grading policy. So we will be doing standard-based report cards at the elementary, focusing on our key identified content areas, and then grades at the secondary level.
Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
So with the attendance and the daily instruction, what platform? Is everyone going to be on Zoom? Is it going to be, because what I'm picturing from what you're saying is that maybe as a teacher, I will sit there and, hey, we're starting at 8:30, and I'm going to be waiting for every single kid, and am I going to take attendance based on whose box shows up? And, hey, if you didn't enroll in that hour, you're absent type of thing?
The students wouldn't, so great question, and we're working out the details of what the attendance plan has to look like, and then how we can actually turn that into actionable, doable processes. So students don't have to, because we're all virtual, all students will be attending at the secondary level, including Benicia High School,
right,
their 4 classes. So it won't be that choice of kind of deciding whether or not to come in. It will be, they will have expected time that they have to check in per period, and then the teacher would take attendance. And my guess is we're going to be using Power School as we do now, but I'm working with the IT department and with Mr. Rahill's department on how do we do that efficiently?
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, basically what you're telling me, if I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher in a different district, but that I would have to make some sort of connection with each kid on a daily basis to be able to mark them as present. They might not be in the synchronous point in time. Or are you saying that they would have to be there if you got first period, you have to be there at 8:30? Or is it just at some point in the day we have to have some sort of connection?
No, the idea is that in Benicia Unified, kids will be following their schedule, so they will log into each period
at the time.
At that time, but there are in the regulation that came out for attendance, there are several other components that can count as attendance, and we're trying to dig in a little bit more. One is called the value of work, and so teachers would be able to. And I guess that's not attendance, that's instructional minutes, but it all kind of goes together. Is attendance is showing up when you're at an assigned Zoom time, turning in work, and then having some kind of back and forth live feedback. So maybe it's a quick email exchange on a piece of work or something. So there's several ways, but attendance at the live instruction is expected.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense, yeah. What else have we talked about? Attendance. Okay, we're ready. And so these, I want to really stress. I know I saw these sample schedules kind of floating around. These are truly samples. I was trying to put something together. We haven't worked yet with the teachers and the administrators about what it will actually look like at the elementary level, because that one is a little bit different because we don't have periods per se. And so I was trying to put together an idea for families of what something might look like. This by no means is set in stone, and the intent was that to show that kids likely at the elementary will be in small groups, because having 25 or 30 5 or 7-year-olds on a Zoom at one time may not always be the most effective way to deliver instruction. So there might be teachers who set their kids up in small groups and have them assigned times either all in the morning, and I heard that in a public comment today, or throughout the day. And I think we'll be working with teachers and administrators on developing those schedules so that they stay as consistent as possible. But the idea being, at the elementary level, there will be likely several times during the day where live instruction will happen for each child, because it wouldn't be a very long block of time because of attention span and developmental appropriateness. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
And so that this is really truly a sample. Please, I want to just stress, don't think that this is what the schedule is going to be. This was just an idea to give you a glimpse into, okay, there will be several points in the day where my child will need to be online and doing synchronous learning, and then there will be time in the day for independent asynchronous learning as well.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you were going to go over it. What's the deal with Fridays?
So
I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead, aren't I? I apologize.
Nope, right, you're absolutely fine. Fridays, so that would happen. What I just described would happen Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays, students would have work to do. It will be independent asynchronous time. There will be time, however, that every teacher will have sort of a student check-in time where they will be checking in with students on Fridays. And that may look different for different teachers and different students. But I think the idea being is instructional minutes, the regulation around instructional minutes hasn't shifted. And so kids and teachers will be working and teaching virtually from the start of school till the end of the school day. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
So some of it will be synchronous and some will be asynchronous. So the same type of thing here at the middle school, Monday through Thursday, it would be period, like I was describing earlier, period by period. So it doesn't necessarily mean in this one that every student's going to have English first period, but this is just a sample of what a particular student's schedule may look like. And then Fridays, again, that independent work time, students will have work to do. There may be intervention sessions and enrichment and other student supports that happen on that day as well. But again, the students should plan that my school day is my school day, just like if I was going into class. And then again, here's a sample for the high school, Benicia High School on Fridays. Again, they will have a block schedule with 4 periods a day. And then Fridays, independent work time, access check-ins, student support, feedback on work. So teachers will be interacting. Fridays are also a time for teachers to do more of that professional learning you heard Ms. Rice talk about, meeting with their grade level teams or departments to ensure that they are being consistent and across the board, and to share strategies and support each other and to plan. So it will be a combination of those things. And then Liberty High School, again, very similar, where there will be periods and students will sign into every single period.
I'm sorry, could we go back to the high school for a sec?
Sure.
So the blocks. So you're not going to have all your classes each day. They
will have their blocks every day, Monday through Thursday. Every student will go to first period, second period, third period, fourth period in virtual learning.
And so with the 4x4, they're taking 4 classes at a time.
Right.
And that's for a semester. And then they finish, instead of a year, you do it in a semester, and then you take a different 4 classes, theoretically, in the spring.
Correct. Unless they're a senior, and you can see that note at the bottom. So seniors could choose that finish their graduation requirements. So a senior that enters their senior year having passed all of their classes should enter their senior year with 180 credits, I believe. So if they take their last 4 classes, they would be at their 220. They could sign up to do an early graduation and graduate in January, or they could if they have just a couple, they could end their day earlier and shift to do some community college courses or other.
Are we still
Thank you.
offering enough courses that they can complete their A through G requirements?
Yes.
Okay. I'm always nervous about the fact that we set our standards at your graduation requirements, which don't equal A through G requirements for college readiness.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that we're still offering that option, offering everything necessary to do that, and making sure the families and students are aware. Because it was just like 4 words in the description, and I was like, "Ooh, that's not enough to really keep people on track."
Right. Yes, we are. The other thing I wanted to just mention, at the middle school, they're doing what's kind of like a modified 4x4, where students will have English all year and math all year, and then they will be in history or science, and they're having conversation about whether that's going to be by semester or by quarter. So they'll take a quarter and then a quarter, and then the same thing with PE and elective. But they felt that because middle school is still really foundational, that English and math needed to be all year.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good.
We heard Ms. Corona talk about special education services, and that they will be offered in small groups. They will be planned with the classroom teachers so that the students won't be missing their synchronous time, but they will plan their small groups around that. And then we will be monitoring and doing all of the assessments, pre and post assessments, to make sure that our students are making progress.
I have a question regarding the special education. A lot of the questions that we've been getting are asking about the students being able to possibly be in a classroom setting because they're smaller groups.
Right.
Is that something that we're going to consider? Because it seems like we do have to provide additional services that sometimes you're not going to be able to get online. I mean, it won't happen the way you want it to happen.
Exactly, and that's a great question. Right now, we are starting virtually because we're on that monitoring list. We have the potential to request a waiver to see if we can do some small group instruction. It does allow us to put a waiver in at some point to do some elementary group. I don't know that it called out special ed in particular, and so we are having those conversations right now, but we're going to start virtually and continue to monitor how things are going.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I talked about this already. One of the key features of our virtual learning will be constantly assessing learning loss and then doing deliberate and extensive outreach to families and providing those additional services as needed. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I shared this with you last time, I believe. We are working closely with Ms. Corona's department on social emotional wellness and support. We are purchasing social emotional wellness curriculum that for all levels that will be built in at different periods and in different courses throughout the school year, and that can be done virtually as well. The other thing that we're trying to do is look at other innovative ways to foster connection, because I think that's one of the underlying and underpinning worries around the social emotional wellness due to COVID, which is the student connection. And so how can we do clubs and other activities to get kids connected so that they feel that sense of belonging? I talked a lot about attendance already, so I won't spend too much time in here, but we will, students are expected to attend all mandatory classes and check-ins, and we will be taking attendance. One thing I do want to stress, parents, if you're listening, if students experience difficulty accessing their work or classes, please immediately contact your child's teacher. They're more than willing to help and help problem solve. But if students aren't in class, they will be marked absent, and we will set up protocols for trying to support families in getting their students here, because that is a requirement and an expectation. You probably have heard this already, but our North Coast section has postponed all fall sports until December or January, and They're looking to do a 3-season to a 2-season sport year, and we won't be having practices or in-person tryouts until we receive that guidance. And then we won't be participating in fall sports at Benicia Middle School this year as well, unfortunately. And then I believe this is my last slide, and that is extracurriculars and electives. And so we will continue to offer electives at the secondary level virtually, and you know, some of them are easy to transfer to a virtual learning environment, and others take a lot of thought and creativity to figure out how to do well. And those are more of those hands-on classes, but our teachers are pretty magical, and I know that they are working and thinking about how can they make it truly meaningful in a virtual world. And then in terms of extracurricular activities, our staff and our site admin will identify which ones will be necessary, and then the principal will approve those. And so some of those will occur as well, but those would have to be virtual. And I think that's it.
So Dr. Beetson, one of the discussions that's been going on at the higher ed facilities are classes that are lab classes. You know, we know at the high school especially,
Good question.
that is in fact, I would imagine it's a concern. It certainly is a question in my mind, how that's going to happen. Do you have any indication yet at all? Are we planning? Is that yet to be determined?
Well, I know one piece, and it's definitely not the same as having kids in class, because we can't do that right now. But our teachers will be able to have access to their classrooms, and so they can do demonstration labs. And we are working on trying to identify some support curriculum that can be used virtually, but unfortunately, it won't be the same as everybody having their own lab at this point. Those are some of the classes that we're still working on, trying to figure out. Ceramics at the high school, what will that be?
Yeah, it's like, how do you...
In high school science we have identified some support curriculum that does some, modeled experiments and virtual experimentation online. So we have identified some of that too.
Okay. Well, and if they're in their classroom, if they can actually do an experiment, it's not the same as the kids blowing things up, but at least they're kind of getting the idea.
Exactly.
We don't want anybody blowing things up. Let's just be clear.
No, that's half the fun of it.
2 questions.
Sure.
I'm sure our IT department, which is so amazing, has thought about all this, but I have had a couple of questions from parents about the technology security, after the Zoom bombing of spring and so on and so forth.
Right.
With all of our Clever platform and our other Google Suite, I'm sure, how are they working on security issues for all of that?
So Google did have a lot of issues right at the beginning, and then they automatically now, just like here, you have to be let in. So that's one of the security pieces. There's also password protection, so kids can get passwords to get into those as well. And then our Google Classrooms are only for Benicia Unified School District. I was going to say employees and students, so we can't share them outside. I tried to actually build one I tried to make a copy of the professional learning one to send to one of my colleagues in another Solano district, and it wouldn't let me do that. So that is pretty tight and secure right within our district.
Okay.
Great. I just want to make sure they're being really aware of that. My second question was, well, one, I think you've made amazing progress in such a short amount of time. So thank you, all of you, for all the work you're doing. We had quite a few questions throughout the last couple of weeks about Virtual Academy and how that is differing from our virtual learning platform that we are starting out in.
Good question.
So glad you asked that. I had it on my note to mention and I forgot. So Virtual Academy wouldn't really kick in until we started a hybrid or full person, because it would probably look very similar. That's what we will be doing. Everybody's sort of in a Virtual Academy right now.
Okay. So if some child were, so we're all starting in Virtual Academy, And we know that we're going to be doing that for at least the first quarter. So come that changeover time, if we go to hybrid or full in person, children would stay in basically the same model and continue forward.
Probably. Yes, that's my initial thinking. We will work with teachers to work out the exact logistics of that. To be really honest, we haven't gotten there because things have changed so much. We've
So quickly
on hybrid, and then
that makes complete sense. And I just wanted to make sure we touched on it because we've had multiple questions about that.
My assumption is it will look very similar to what we're doing now, and either that student would stay in that teacher's classroom, or we would scoop up kids that wanted to stay in a virtual academy with teachers that were teaching virtually, but the methodology would likely be the same. Is that clear? Yeah.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be, I did see some questions somewhere. We would never put more than a class load of students in a virtual class with a teacher. So if it was 30 students at the 4th grade level, that's, we would need to stay within those contexts as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
I'm sorry, you had a question?
Well, I just wanted to clarify one thing, Mark. We've also had a lot of comments and questions about, the computers. So, Dr. Beatson, at some point you or the site principals will clarify the process for parents who got one Chromebook for the family, but they really have 3 kids, so they need 2 more. That will become really clear for them.
Yes, we our IT department, because they already have the process that they used at Benicia High School for doing one-to-one, and they have a whole list of students that already have Chromebooks. Will do their magic and match that up and come up with a process for a one-to-one checkout once we're at that point.
Okay.
But that order, because we just found out about the extra federal funding, we were just able to place that order today.
Okay, because I have been getting that question a lot too. I think several of us have been, and we assured them there would be some process. We just didn't know what that was going to be. You were going to go through.
Yep, that will come out. Our IT department will work with us on what that process is, and then we'll get that information out to families.
Great. And then, Mr. Maselli, I hear you have a.
Yeah, I on the flip side too, I've been reached out to by some teachers who don't have the tech that they need, dot cams and stuff. What is the process? Should they go to their site administrator to say, hey, I need, these are people that didn't have it during the spring either, and it made things a bit more difficult?
Absolutely. I will talk with Mr. Padawan on how he wants to get that information from staff. But that's on his radar too, is we need to make sure that our students all have a device. We need to make sure that the teachers all have a working device, that they have the other supplemental technology that they need, whether we have it in their classroom and they need to take it home if they're going to work from home, or if they need to go into their classroom.
Or maybe they're newer, they don't have it at all.
Right, or they can order it.
So, but you don't want them to go, you want to wait? Do you want them to email anybody or just wait? Or
let me talk to Mr. Padawan tomorrow so that I can find out how he wants to get that information, so we don't get, I don't want any emails to just get lost in the email.
Yeah, solid.
There might be a form that somebody needs to fill out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I also had another question. I know somewhere in this document that you've just shared with us, there was something about some kind of parent training.
Yes.
And when is that going to happen? Is that going to be prior to the 17th so that everybody's ready to go?
We're looking at putting together video professional learning like we're doing for our staff on some of the different technology use, as well as some of the platforms. I'm also working with our Imagine a Language and Literacy. That's what one of the programs will be using for our English language learners. They will provide some professional learning for our teachers, as well as then we will offer that to our English language learner families to help them with that virtually. So that's something we're also in the process of.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
And I want to also just say we have from the spring, both Ms. Rice and Ms. Golson had put together a wonderful document of resources for families on how to Google Classroom and how to do all of these things. So we have that to start with, and then we'll continue to build upon that as well.
We're cleaning that
happens? Oh, sorry.
We're narrowing that down.
Okay. What happens if a parent is not able to teach, like to help teach their child? Like, what are we going to do in that situation?
Well, we are going to have the synchronous and asynchronous learning. So we will be having the teachers actually teaching the kids, whether it is live teaching or whether it is what we call a flip learning model, where if I am teaching, I am posting a video of myself or a colleague teaching, and then I'm going to have that synchronous time to reteach and question. So there's going to be a lot more actual connecting and teaching going on, more of the expectation of the student being there.
I'm seeing that with the samples that you provided, I think parents will be really happy that there's more teacher-student learning happening.
Yes.
For a longer period of time.
Exactly. And we also, like, for example, learning A to Z. So we have that on our document as a support curriculum because our curriculum is either teacher college or one of our guided reading for, say, elementary. But learning A to Z is an actual curriculum. And we are bringing that into our special ed. Ms. Corona has brought that in as a special ed curriculum as well. And the beauty will be that our gen ed are using that as a support as well as our special ed. There are built-in some teaching videos aligned in there, as well as like our Zern math. So a lot of the programs we're looking into have some of that teaching and reteaching built in that will support that as well.
Thank you for your answers, and thank you, all of you, for all the work you've put into this. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
One more thing, Sherry, just to add to that, and Dr. Beatson said this, another key thing again will be if there is a situation like that and parents are struggling, it's going to be that communication with their child's teacher to let them know of that so that we can figure out ways to support them and their families.
The ones I think that are going to miss the boat a little bit are the ones, the parents that are working full time,
right,
or have multiple students in different grade levels that are trying to help all of them. It's
right.
going to be
it's
challenging.
not easy, and it's not going to be easy for anyone. But we are, again, I always say this, but we're very blessed to have this community of teachers and administrators and parents, working together on this. So we're trying to find as many layers of support for this planning time that we have, this couple months to turn it around, so that there's more than we had last.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Leslie.
And one last thing, the other thing our IT department has worked on is a live chat, so that if parents are at home and a student can't get on to their Google Classroom for whatever reason, or something happens, the instruction doesn't have to stop in the classroom while the teacher tries to problem solve with one. They can put in a live chat and get some live help right in that moment. And so we're hoping that works as well as a support for teachers, for families.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, and I think the other thing that you mentioned too was some of the communication protocols that will allow students and or parents to be asking questions and get time effective responses, because you want to do it when you're in the moment and not
right.
Or so I think that's also going to be important, because that was something that our parents were asking for as well.
Yep. And our teachers are working really hard. They're excited they wish they were back in the classroom with their students, but they're excited to get going on this work and to have a great year. And I know that our teachers, because they rose to the occasion in the spring, it wasn't perfect. It was that emergency teaching. And I know that they will continue to do that same work as we move forward.
I agree. Are there any other questions or comments? This is our last discussion item of the evening, so it's your last call. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you, everybody. You're doing pretty amazing stuff, and I am really excited that so many of the comments and concerns that we've heard, you've thought about, you've planned out, and you know, there are examples and ways to address those concerns for parents as well as our students and our teachers. So I think we're really fortunate, and I just want to say thank you. So, and Sherry says, bravo. We can put those hand claps up again. Okay, if there's nothing else or no other question, this meeting is adjourned. And again, thank you, and stay well and be safe. Good night.
Good night.